These are our men. The Parker Watch Company and its dealers throughout America dedicate this program to the United States Treasury Department for the sale of war bonds. With Gene Hersholt as our special guest today, we proudly present another in this series of dramatic programs, These Are Our Men. In the fight for total victory, these are our men. Vandergrift, Eisenhower, Nimitz, MacArthur, Wainwright, Halsey, Patton, Bradley, Today we give you one of the least known yet most powerful of all the leaders of the armed forces of the United Nations. The Commander-in-Chief of the United States Fleet and Chief of Naval Operations, Fleet Admiral Ernest Joseph King. Admiral King's story will be piped aboard right away and on the double, as they say in the Navy. But let me belay everything for 10 seconds to remind you to be sure to send for your copy of the book brochure, These Are Our Men. I'll give you all details later. And now a word of greeting from our guest bond salesman, star of radio, stage, and screen, Mr. Gene Hersholt.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I won't keep you now, but I do want to say that I'll be back later on the program to tell you a little story of my own. Meanwhile, please remember this. The boys over there are hoping that you'll back them up with a bond over here. Thank you. And now it's my privilege to introduce an authentic profile of Fleet Admiral Ernest J. King.
Authentic profile of Fleet Admiral Ernest J. King. That's what Mr. Hersholt just said. I'm sure he said it in all honesty, but he was wrong. I know because I'm a radio writer and I wrote this so-called authentic profile. Now, don't get me wrong. I want you to listen to it. But, well, it all started when I was called into the NBC editor's office to discuss an assignment.
I make myself clear, not merely a picture of the Admiral. I want a picture of the man. What he likes for breakfast, how many cigarettes he smokes a day, the name of his favorite movie, what he does for relaxation. You know, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when can you get down to Washington and see him?
Well, I can leave today, I suppose. This afternoon on the Congressional.
Good. Now, just one other thing.
Yes?
King is what the Navy calls a taut ship man, a disciplinarian. He'd as soon chew up a rear admiral as an ensign. Now, I happen to know that he doesn't like personal publicity.
Uh-oh.
Don't let that stop you. Get the story. I'll let Washington know that you're on the way. And we'll be expecting you.
And so I set out from New York to Washington to get an authentic profile of Fleet Admiral Ernest Joseph King, USN. Although I didn't know it at the time, this very short journey was to be stretched out on Navy ships and planes to a trip of almost 30,000 miles, all the way to the Philippines and back again. But, as I say, I didn't know this at the time. So going down on the train to Washington, I phoned up on King's naval career. Graduated Annapolis, class of 1901. Out of 67 members, graduated ahead of 63 of his classmates. Service in the Atlantic and on Asiatic Station. Twice instructor at the Academy. Twice on staff of Commander-in-Chief, Atlantic Fleet, including period as Assistant Chief of Staff during World War I. Commander, torpedo flotillas, and submarines in the Atlantic. In charge of salvaging the sunken subs S1 and S4.
Next up, Washington.
Captain King as naval aviator, as commander of a seaplane tender, as skipper of the carrier Lexington. Rear Admiral Ernest King as chief of the Bureau of Aeronautics. Vice Admiral King as commander Aircraft Battle Forces. One of the outstanding leaders in developing naval air power.
All up, Washington. This way, please.
With Hitler attacking in Europe, Ernest J. King, a four-star admiral, is commander-in-chief, Atlantic Fleet.
Carry your bag, sir? Carry your bag, sir?
Oh, yes, thank you very much. And you realize that Admiral King has served in just about every type of duty the Navy has to offer. He's an expert. But that's King the Admiral, the expert on warfare. You want to know about King the man. Well, in the mass of biographical material, you remember reading that he often walks along a certain street on his way to the Navy Department early in the morning. Yes, you just have time to make it. Yep, it's your lucky day, because there he is, swinging along on the sidewalk just ahead of you, tall and thin and straight as a ramrod. The first five-star admiral of the fleet in United States history. And now is your chance to observe him while you yourself are unobserved. A chief bosun's mate approaches. His 7 hash marks proclaim him a veteran of 28 years' service. The CPO salutes with the easy casualness of one who greets an old friend.
Morning, sir.
Oh, good morning, Peterson. See, they've still got you on the binnacle list.
No, it's that bug I picked up in the Fijis, Admiral. If they can't keep me, I'll be back at soon sea, sir.
You stop the CPO and you say to him, I say, Chief.
Yes?
Who is that officer you just spoke to?
Oh, him? Why, that's Admiral King. We were shipmates together, an old lady Lex.
Oh.
Yeah, us old-timers in the fleet call him God Almighty and the 12 Apostles.
You realize that the CPO meant no disrespect to the deity in his proud description. But you don't have time to think about it because now a rear admiral is approaching. You notice that the rear admiral straightens up and smartens his step. His snappy salute is strictly regulation.
Good morning, Admiral King. Morning.
And you stop the rear admiral and you say, excuse me, sir.
Yes?
I wonder if you officers have a nickname for the admiral, for Admiral King.
A nickname?
Yes.
Only behind his back, I assure you. You see, there seems to be no problem, no puzzle that he can't solve. So, we call him the Thin Man.
Pardon me, sir, and thanks. And you break away because now you see a wave approaching. An enlisted wave whose obvious self-consciousness proclaims that she is very, very fresh out of boot camp and very, very new to the Navy. But she recognizes the Admiral, and you can see that she's flustered. She begins to salute while she's still 15 feet away. And she gets her hand to her hat brim and forgets to take it down.
Good afternoon, sir. Oh, good. I mean, good morning, sir.
Good morning, good morning.
And then you see the little wave begin to smile. And you know that she's not smiling at the tall, thin man who has returned a salute with a flourish. She is smiling back at him. And before you know it, as you follow Admiral King up the stairs in the Navy Department to his office, you find yourself humming. You open the door and you're in Admiral King's busy office.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm in a meeting with Joyce.
Then you find yourself talking to a commander, one of Admiral King's aides, a young submariner with ribbons on his chest from here to there.
I see. You mean a story like the ones you see in a fan magazine?
Well, yes.
No, the Admiral wouldn't like it.
But Admiral King's got a lot of fans, Commander. 130 million of them. And this would be, well, it'd be good publicity for the Navy.
Admiral King has always said, sir, that if the Navy does its share in winning the war, and more than its share if it can, well, that's good publicity for the Navy.
That's true, but the American people want to know about Admiral King. They have a right to know.
Granted, you're exactly right. And it's your duty to tell them. What I'm trying to suggest to you is that you're going about it in the wrong way.
Why? What do you mean?
Well, it's a little hard to put into words. I guess it amounts to the fact that Fleet Admiral King considers that his story is not merely the story of one man.
But I don't understand.
Well, now, I've written out a list of places here. Here.
Thank you.
Now, I want you to go to those places.
But, Commander...
That's right. I want you to go to the places on that list.
Well,
Take a look at what you see at those places. Talk to people, ask questions. When you come back, maybe you'll understand a little better that Fleet Admiral King's story isn't merely the story of one man.
Well, a short time later, after certain formalities, you're landing at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Pearl Harbor. That's only the first stop on the list the commander handed you. Well, your jeep takes you along Makalapa Drive to Pacific Fleet headquarters on the island of Oahu. You open a door, and pretty soon you're talking to a vice admiral who offers you...
Here, have a cigarette, sir. You smoke, don't you?
Oh, yes, I smoke, but these days with cigarettes so hard to get.
Well, things must be getting tough back in the States these days. Here, won't you have this pack?
You mean you have some more?
Sure. You see, the Navy believes, and I'm sure the Army does too, that a man who fights should have the things he's used to. Right?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, we believe that he should have the things he needs and wants. You see, good food, good clothing, good equipment. When a man is offering his life for you, that's the least you can offer him.
All the cigarettes they need, boy. But that's what I want to talk to you about. Who's responsible, and I mean ultimately responsible, for seeing to it that the men in the Navy and the Coast Guard and the Marine Corps get what they need and want?
Admiral King is, of course.
That's what I thought you'd say.
Yes, he is the final responsibility. But Admiral King is perhaps best noted for two qualities. One is his ability to delegate responsibility. The other is his demand that the men under him be able to accept responsibility, to exercise this responsibility with initiative and boldness. I well remember the day Admiral King told us about his theory of calculated risk. It was shortly after Pearl Harbor, and he had called us in for a conference.
All of you who know me, gentlemen, know better than to expect a speech from me. I don't go in for oratory. You all know the gravity of the situation which now faces us. The Japs have swept over the Philippines, moved down the Malay Barrier, and have invested the Dutch East Indies. They are now moving eastward into New Guinea. They must be stopped. Now, I draw a line on this chart of the Pacific. From Midway, the line runs to the Hawaiian Islands, southwestward, athwart the Hebrides and the Solomons, to Port Moresby in New Guinea. We will stop them on this line.
But, Admiral, sir, how?
For years, we have taught our officers to accept responsibility, to make decisions, and to act on those decisions. This training should now pay dividends. But as a result of the damage to our fleet and the many demands being made upon it, our officers must operate on the theory of calculated risk.
Admiral, would you mind explaining that theory again? Perhaps some of the officers here are not familiar with it.
Calculating risk? Well, what it amounts to is simply this. In every battle plan, in every campaign, in every attack, let's be sure that we hurt the enemy worse than he hurts us, whatever the cost. Let's be sure that anything we have to pay will count as part payment on final victory. That's all, gentlemen.
Well, that's the way Admiral King gave it to us on that day. I think you'll agree we haven't done too badly. We fought a major war in the Atlantic, the Mediterranean, on all the seas and oceans of the world.
That's true. But tell me this, sir. After Admiral King drew that line on the chart, where did you finally stop the Japs?
Well, at several places. Battle of the Coral Sea was the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
We did better at Midway. I would say, well, I suppose we really stopped them at Guadalcanal.
Thank you, Admiral. Thank you very much indeed.
But what's this? Are you rushing off?
Right. I'm off for Guadalcanal. Guadalcanal, bloody Guadalcanal. You remember reading about it in the papers. The saga of the Marine Assault Forces. The thin line of ships and planes which supplied the Marines and helped them fight off the Japs. But two things about Guadalcanal today come as a complete surprise to you. One is the fact that much of the island is very mountainous, and good-sized mountains they are, too. The other is the fact that the flatlands of Guadalcanal today, when seen from the air, look just like the farm country of our Middle West. Acres and acres of neatly tilled fields. Well, you don't get it. So you set out to investigate, and once again, you find yourself talking to a grizzled chief petty officer who drives up on a tractor which is pulling a cultivator. Chief! Hey, Chief! Yes, I was just saying that I don't get it. I don't understand all this farmland. I don't get it.
Well, now, I can't see if there's any mystery about a few acres of beach. Yeah, and what's so mysterious about the fact that the South 40 over there is planted the green bean.
But on Guadalcanal, a savage jungle island.
Used to be, you mean, when the Japs had it. Canal is under new management now, USA. And the war went that way, west. Of course, there's still a lot of men here, mostly Army and a few Marines. But today, the canal is used mostly for rest camps.
But all these vegetables growing here, well, this is big-time farming.
Effort. They hauled nothing but vegetables. Ships that are still very badly needed in the Atlantic.
Yes, I can see that. It's very plain.
Now, you've heard that song they sing on the radio about the San Fernando Valley?
Sanford, yes.
All right. I'm willing to bet you a Jap officer's saber against a plug 5 yen that we grow better vegetables right here in the canal than they grow in the San Fernando Valley or any other valley. And we grow 4 crops a year.
Well, they're fine-looking beets, I'll say that. But it's a little strange. And to find you here, well, it's...
Yeah, I know. Don't think I wouldn't rather be on a ship in a good fight. But this man's Navy today is a big Navy, mister. It takes a lot of different kind of people to run it, you know. People in landing craft, in tugs, on carriers, at supply bases, on battleships. Yeah. And me running a cockeyed cultivator in a beet patch. But I'm in the Navy, mister, and don't you forget it. I'm just as much in the Navy as Ernie King himself. I guess you might say that Ernie King is the Navy.
And so you travel on by jeep, ship, and plane.
All hands, secure from general quarters. All hands, secure from general quarters. Set condition 2. Watch 1. The smoking lamp is now lighted.
You're on a cruiser now. You've just been up to the Bonans. And you watched your ships and your planes plaster the bitumen out of these fortress islands near the Jap homeland. Mostly so far, you've heard about Fleet Admiral King, the planner, the builder, and the fighter of the mightiest Navy the world has ever known. Found the wardroom table over coffee, and you slyly turn the conversation toward King, the man. Everybody has a story.
Story is tough, but only if you're not on the ball when you're supposed to be. And if you're not, brother, you'd better stand from under.
And another officer describing Fleet Admiral King's famous brusqueness points out that the Admiral could also be funny when he chose, in a salty, hard-bitten kind of way, of course. And once, so this officer's story goes, a visiting admiral was creating an uproar in King's anteroom in Washington. The King looked around with an annoyed expression and said to his aide,
Hey, what's he doing out there?
He's talking to New York, sir.
Well, tell him to use the telephone.
And then another officer tells of an incident which occurred when he was attached to Admiral King's staff. In January of 1943, it was. And as the officer talks, you see King seated at his desk, painstakingly answering a letter he received from a Brooklyn schoolgirl.
You say in your letter that your teacher has given you the assignment of writing my biography for your English course. I am sincerely honored, and I am happy to answer the questions you ask. I drink a little wine now and then. I smoke about 1 pack of cigarettes a day. I think I like Spencer Tracy as well as any of the movie stars. My hobby is crossword puzzles when they're difficult. My favorite sport is golf when I can get to play it. Otherwise, I'm fond of walking. I sincerely hope this information will be of help to you, and I remain yours truly, Ernest J. King.
And now you find yourself on the beach at an advanced base whose name you're not permitted to mention. The reason you can't mention it is the fact that you're about to go aboard a landing craft for the next operation. Next operation in capital letters. You don't know what the target will be, and you won't know until you get there. Maybe Luzon, or Manila, or Bataan. But you know it's going to be tough. And you hope it'll be tougher on the Japs than on you. As you sit there in the darkness waiting, a Marine and a Seabee are talking.
Well, we're off again, Mac. I hope we get back.
Yeah, I hope. You know which one is the Marine, because in the Pacific, every Marine is known as Mac.
Hey, Mac. Are you scared?
Sure. Scared stiff, just like always.
Yeah, that's right, you. You hit more beaches than I have. But tell me, were you scared every time?
Sure. Guadal, Bougainville, Chihuahua, Guam. Scared stiff every time.
Hey, Mac,
Yeah?
what do you suppose we're fighting for?
You got me. I don't know.
Nah, I don't know either, I guess.
Unless maybe... Well, I lost a lot of buddies when we hit those beaches I just told you about. Guess I'm going to lose some good buddies when we hit this beach, wherever it is. Guess maybe if I'm fighting for anything, my buddies in the Corps. That's it, I guess. If I'm fighting for anything, it's for the Marine Corps.
See, I never thought of that, Mac. But now you take us Seabees. We work and fight with you Gyrenes and with the Coast Guard and the rest of the Navy, too. I guess if I'm fighting for anything, well, I'm fighting for the whole damn Naval Service.
Well, after that, I go back to Washington. And I go to the Navy Department. Soon I'm talking to the Naval Commander in Admiral King's office, the one who gave me the list, and told me to go and find out what the Navy was all about. I don't quite know what to say to the commander as he greets me.
Well, I see you're back.
Yes, Commander. I went to those places you told me to see. I think I know why Fleet Admiral King feels that his story is more than the story of one individual.
Good. I hoped you'd learn something about the Navy.
Well, that's just it. I learned it, but I doubt if I can tell the public.
Hmm?
You see, the Navy is not one man or many men. The Navy isn't a lot of ships or planes or bases. It's a feeling. It's a loyalty to an ideal and a tradition. It's a determination to live up to something that's a part of you and yet is bigger than you are. But I ask you, Commander, how can you tell anybody that?
Perhaps you're being a little too ambitious. I think Admiral King has already said it for you. In much simpler words, of course. But listen, America's top admiral is speaking. Fleet Admiral King himself.
Every man in the Navy must learn not only how to do his own particular job, he must learn to do it in such a manner that it will contribute to the greater efficiency of his ship or his unit. Once a ship or unit is trained to operate efficiently by itself, it must then learn to cooperate with other units or other ships and planes so that all may function as parts of a powerful but smooth-running machine. Each unit must learn to play its position on the team, and the whole team must be equipped, coached, drilled, and taught to fight and win at any time and anywhere in the world.
Stotts Cotsworth did the narration, and Richard Gordon played the part of Admiral King. Our thanks to both of them for a fine job. And just one word of explanation, ladies and gentlemen. That 30,000-mile trip Mr. Cotsworth spoke of, it was really made by the man who wrote today's script. Now here's our special guest again, beloved star of screen and radio, Jean Herschel.
Thank you very much. Now that you've heard the story of a great man, I want to tell you this story of a great lady. A lady I'll never forget as long as I live. She has the unusual first name of Katrinka. I met her at a bond rally some time ago, and she bought 1 10-cent stamp from me. So you can see this lady is not very wealthy. And she's not very beautiful either, the way most of us know beauty. She is winsome, though, and very sweet. And what's more important, She's given America more than the richest banker ever could give, although she's completely unaware of it. Now, from that, you might suspect that Katrinka is stupid. Well, she's not. She's just very young. Katrinka is not quite 5, and she bought a 10-cent stamp from me at a bond rally. Oh, it meant giving up a lot of childish dreams involving very sweet candy to give that 10 cents to the United States. But she gave it. She knows that she can feel very proud about her gift to her country. But what she doesn't know is that she also gave her daddy to America. He was killed at Guadalcanal when Katrinka was 2. And with him died a lot of dreams and plans that a loving couple had made for a child's future. One day soon, Katrinka is going to notice that other children have daddies and that she has none. She's going to ask a lot of questions, and her mother will have to try to explain as best she can. And I, for one, am happy that I shall not have to be present during that explanation. Well, that's all there is to the story of Katrinka. It's not very exciting, I know. But I thought maybe you'd like to hear it. And to assert that you will do all in your power to see to it that hundreds of thousands of other daddies come home to the babies they left behind. A good way to do that is to never skip a payday without buying a bond. Once you bought them, never to cash one in until maturity. Will you do it for a Marine who died at Guadalcanal? And for a little girl named Katrinka? Thank you.
Thank you, Gene Herschel. These are Our Men, featuring today the dramatized story of Fleet Admiral Ernest J. King, with Gene Herschel, star of the Dr. Christian program, as our special guest, is presented each Saturday by the Parker Watch Company and its dealers throughout America, but not to sell watches. What we ask you to buy is war bonds. Now a word about the book portfolio I mentioned at the beginning of the program. Have you sent for your copy yet? It's a wonderful booklet in brilliant colors containing the pictures and biographies of all the great American war leaders being dramatized on this series of programs. And in combination with it, a portfolio for the safekeeping of your war bonds, as well as a handy chart for recording the serial numbers of your bonds. The Parker Watch Company offers this ingeniously designed kit for the mailing and wrapping cost of 10 cents in coin. It's something you'll be very proud to own. So for your copy, send 10 cents in coin to cover cost of mailing and wrapping, and address your request to the Parker Watch Company, Post Office Box 14, New York 19, New York. That address again is the Parker Watch Company, Post Office Box 14, New York 19, New York. Next week, These Are Our Men will bring you the authentic story of that great hero of the Pacific, General Douglas MacArthur, with Ralph Edwards as our special guest. Be sure to tune in. Same time, same station. Our music was composed and conducted by Joseph Chernyavsky, and the entire production was under the direction of Anton M. Leader. These Are Our Men is recorded by the Office of War Information for shortwave rebroadcast to foreign countries. Don't forget now, for your copy of our new combination book portfolio entitled These Are Our Men, send 10 cents in coin only to the Parker Watch Company, Post Office Box 14, New York 19, New York. This is Jack Costello speaking.
This is the National Broadcasting Company.